Welcome to Crafting Your Next Move.
Welcome to Crafting Your Next Move with Lori Kraft, Associate Broker with the Kraft Team at Origin Realty Group. Lori is a top-producing Houston realtor with more than 15 years of experience helping clients buy and sell homes across the greater Houston area. Known for her honest advice and boutique approach, she and her team combine cutting-edge marketing with good old-fashioned service to deliver results that speak for themselves. I'm Leanne Lyon, and today we are talking about selling a well-loved home in the $700,000 to $800,000 range and moving up to a property above $1 million. Lori will break down how to protect your equity, plan the timing, and navigate this move with confidence. Hello, Lori.
Hey, how are you?
So good. I'm very excited about our topic. So, Lori, when someone is thinking about selling their current home and stepping up into the $1 million plus market, where does this planning usually begin on your end?
On my end, it actually begins before I even meet with client. I do a phone call that gives me some ideas about what their main goals are, because at the end of the day, it's about what the client wants. It's not what I think is best for the client. It's what the client feels is best for them. So I gather a lot of information there. I do a lot of background checking on the property itself. We make sure everything lines up. There's no discrepancies in the records, things like that, especially when you're talking about this price point, because not always, but normally it's changed hands more than once. So you do want to try to see what you can find out.
Well, for move-up sellers, timing can feel complicated. What tends to matter most when deciding whether to buy first, sell first, or overlap the two?
Well, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, because it absolutely depends on the client's needs. So for some clients, it's a matter of we have to have the equity out of this one, or we cannot move to another home. And if the market is shifted and it's more of a buyer's market and less of a seller's market, you're going to find those kinds of clients, or those clients in those situations, are really going to feel compelled to at least have an offer under contract, because they're going to have to go in with a contingency. And if they don't have it at least under contract, it's going to be a very hard sell to that future house. If, however, you've got clients, and I have lots of these, who just don't want the uncomfortableness of having to try to be show ready all the time while trying to get all their financials in order, and they really feel like, you know what, I've got enough money that I can at least get moving on this next house, and then maybe I do 2 mortgages, pay off one, or maybe I just structure the loan in such a way that once this property sells, I just pay off the second property. So there's lots of things to consider in the financing part, but for me, it's more about what does the client need? What's going to be most important to them?
Absolutely. Clients first every time.
Always.
You've worked with a lot of clients who are moving into larger, higher end homes. What do they usually underestimate about how different the luxury market behaves?
Well, there's a couple of things that always seem to shock them. One is that when you're looking at $1 million and up, and I will be honest, that $1 million, I mean, to me, it sounds like a ton of money, right? To most people, it's a lot of money for a home, but that bar shifted. It's been shifted. So what used to be a $500,000 or $600,000 house 4 years ago, you're now in the $1 million mark. So, and it depends on your area. You might get a tinderbox in the middle of West U for $1 million. But if you go out to the burbs, you're going to get a McMansion for $1 million. So some of it's setting up expectations. If you want to be inner loop, you're not going to get the same square footage that you had when you were living in Waller on acreage. It's just not going to happen. So that's the first step, is setting up the expectation. The second thing is they don't understand, because they've bought properties that are on, in that 500 and under range. And usually the home that they're selling at 800 or 700, they purchased for 3 or 4. So they went and viewed properties without any kind of contract, which we now know this big no-no, can't do that anymore. And they viewed properties without even really being pre-approved yet. They just wanted to see what was out there. With a luxury property, you need to have your pre-approval lined up. It is not uncommon for that listing agent to say, hey, I'm going to need to see a copy of the pre-approval letter first before you even get to step foot in this house, because you don't want to waste a seller's time. The other thing that is going to come up, and often does, especially in the 2 million and up mark, is these are going to be accompanied showings, which is uncomfortable for buyers. That means you're not accompanying them. I mean, you will, but the agent for the seller is also going to be there. And the seller has, or that agent has a duty to protect that 2 million up property. But also, those luxury listings come with unique features and attributes that only the listing agent really is going to be able to sell to the buyer. And they feel very compelled to do that. I mean, I do that. You want to be able to explain to a buyer why it is your price at this point. So those are what I would say are the minimum differences and what you need to prepare buyers for that they usually are not prepared for.
So, when you're helping a client position their current home to maximize equity, what strategies make the most meaningful difference in that $700,000 to $800,000 range?
Well, first of all, I always check square footage because you're going to see that it's going to be different. And the second thing is going to be not just maintenance. If you're buying a house at 800,000, that roof better be newer or in really good condition, period. So if you got a 25-year-old roof, I don't care that you're in the middle of Westview. Unless you're 100 to $150,000 under the next guy, you're not going to be able to sell for what you want. It's just not going to happen. So you need that. You need your mechanicals to be in place. But people at this price point, even though you're not in the $2 million range, they have an expectation that your house is going to shine like a new penny. They want it to look not like 2002. They want it to look like 2025 or 2026, which means you're going to have to do some things. You're going to have to make sure your flooring is beautiful, and it needs to be the same. You can't have different flooring in every room and expect to get 700,000 for your house. It's not going to happen. You can't have different wild paint colors throughout. You need to be consistent. Even though it's not necessarily what I would call luxury in Houston at that 800, 700 mark, it's close enough that you're going to get those buyers where their expectations are here. And if you don't meet them, they move on. In fact, they won't even come see your house. They're going to flip through pictures, and it will not match what their perception of value is. So they will never even make an appointment. And you're never going to know why, because you're not going to get any feedback. Nobody's going to say, hey, I don't like your house because it looks like 2002 Harvest Gold. They're not going to say that. You just will never know. And then you'll be frustrated.
Inventory and price points can shift quickly in the luxury segment. How can you help sellers set realistic expectations about what their next home will cost and what they'll need to do to be competitive?
Well, to start with, your first question, what do I need to do to prepare them if they're a move up buyer and they're looking in that luxury segment? The first thing we do is I kind of blanket them with comps because I want them to know what it's going to cost them to get what they want. And a lot of times I will take them to see different houses so they get a better feel for what that price point will buy. It's always stunning and shocking to people that you've got a 1.2 or 1.1 budget, but the area that you chose, maybe like, for example, in Houston, maybe you're looking in River Oaks. First of all, I don't think you're going to find one for 1.1, but let's just say you did. Or you find something in West University. If you're looking in those areas, you're going to find something that doesn't feel like $1,000,000. You're going to find a cracker box or something that needs a whole lot of work. So that's why I take people and I say, if you want to be in this area, this is what your money's going to buy you in this area. Now, if this is your top dollar, maybe we go out a little bit and let's look out a little bit and see how much more you can get. And it's going to be a better match for what your head has in store or in mind for that price point. So that's the first thing I do. And as far as shifting markets, luxury can shift, but a lot of time it holds. Because you have to, I remind my sellers of this too, when they're selling these big dollar houses, you have 1% of the population that can afford these houses. And then what you have to do is you have to take that pie slice, that 1% pie slice, and you have to find the 1% of sellers or 1% of homes out there that is in Houston, Texas, is in the area of Houston that you want to be in, is in the neighborhood that you want to be in and meets all the other criteria you have. So that makes your inventory very, very small. And that means you have to put on your patient hat. You need to be starting your search long before you're ready to pull the trigger on it. And you need to be prepared that when the house that you fall in love with shows up, your negotiating power may be very slim. And just keep that in mind. For the seller, though, the seller has to remember, again, same thing, same criteria. If you are in Hockley, it's going to be a very different looking house for 1.2. And I'm going to tell you, if you're in Hockley, you better have some land at 1.2 because nobody's buying a gentleman's ranch for that. They're just not. But they do want all that land. Now, that means the house doesn't have to be as great. But the same thing is true if you're in town as a seller, you need to know what your competition is. And the way I keep people abreast of that is a month beforehand, I send them comps every week. And then right before we list, before we actually narrow down that price, and we can change it up till the day we put it on market, is I send them comps every day. So they see shifts.
Wow. Well, and being prepared, of course, financing plays a big role in those move up decisions. So, without going into lender territory, what should sellers understand? What's that?
You got to stay in my lane.
Yep, stay in our lanes, right? What should sellers understand about how pre approval, appraisals, or loan timelines can impact their purchase strategy?
Well, if you're buying, you have to be prepared for paying and not maybe not getting it back. And that is a problem for buyers, especially at this price point. You're going to be tying up earnest money. The minute you plunk down an offer, that's good faith money. You may have to fight to get it back. If you're in that option period in Texas, it's kind of, I call it the get out of jail free card because you can exercise that option for any reason. I actually had a buyer tell me the house had bad mojo. We pulled out and he got his money back because the title company's not going to fight with you about that. It's cut and dry. It's very black and white. But if you get past that option period, then you're into a financing issue. Maybe you thought you were all good. Maybe the lender said, yeah, you look great. And then their underwriter finds something you didn't even know existed. Like your ex-spouse had taken out a loan years and years ago and defaulted. And it was on your credit and now it's coming up. Or maybe you thought because you were trying to be a good steward, I'm going to pay off my truck. And it was a $50,000 loan, but you disrupted your credit because you've been making payments regularly and it shows a great line. And all of a sudden you clear it and it becomes a problem. It lowers your credit. Or worse, you defaulted on something and it's old and it's actually falling off the books and you go back in and you say, well, now I'm going to pay it off because I want to be a good steward and I've got the money. Well, bank didn't see that, but when you paid it off, they did. And that can send in everything spiraling downward. And if in fact you have your earnest money out there and now you have to terminate based on financing, you need a lender to say that you cannot make this work. The lender doesn't give you that letter, your earnest money is going to be up for grabs. The same thing is true if you default because you feel like they're not being fair and square and you feel like something else was wrong. Now everybody's in court. You're not guaranteed to get that earnest money back. So it oftentimes you see 1% or 2% earnest money. If you're talking about a $2 million house, that's a lot of money that's tied up in earnest money. You're talking $10,000, $20,000. So you don't want to tie it up and lose it. So you need to know that going in. Same thing is true for option fee. Be prepared. If you are used to paying a 200, well, we don't see 200 million, $300, $500 for an option fee for 10 days. In these luxury homes, you can expect $1,500. And yeah, you walk away, they keep it. That's how it works. You can get into it and you have spent thousands on inspections and appraisals, and you walk away, nobody's giving you that money back. It's the cost of doing business. So you need to be prepared for that. The seller needs to know that that appraisal can upend the whole deal. And that appraisal, if this is a loan product, is being done by a third party independent. I have no undue influence over them. I'm going to provide them comps. They can ignore them. That as a seller, I'm going to do that. Buyer, I don't want to do that because I want to be fighting about my price, right? I want to bring it down. But the seller wants that to be upgraded. So on those things, we need to be prepared. that if that price comes in really low, you're back to square one or you're negotiating. That's all there is to it.
Can you share an example of a move up client who approached the transition thoughtfully and ended up in a stronger position because of early planning?
Well, I have a couple, but one in particular, I think I'm just kind of giggling because I'm thinking about it now. They had a home to sell, right? They did not want anything to derail their sale. So what they actually did is they took money out of an account. So they had 5% down, which is all they really needed for the conventional. So they went in without condition of sale of other property. So they knew they were going to be able to afford both mortgages. They were approved based on affording both mortgages. So that way, when they went and made their offer was strong, but more than their offer being strong, the lender believed they could do it. So and they didn't make any offer until they had their property under contract and they knew they were going to sell it. So then they sold their house, they were able to increase the down payment, and then it was smooth sailing for them. I have another client who had animals, didn't want the animals to disturb the sale of their property because, animals smell. There's nothing you can do about that. So they went ahead, pulled money out, put the money down, made the move first, then sold. And they did 2 loan products on it. So that way they paid off one mortgage and were just left with one small mortgage. Worked out beautifully. Just good planning.
Excellent. Well, homes over $1 million often come with more complex features like pools, outdoor kitchens, larger lots, older estates, or even custom builds. As we're wrapping up here, what tends to matter most during showings and inspections for this price point?
At this price point, you got to think, where is my wow factor? Because and for what I said, that property in Hockley, if you're buying out there, your wow factor is how much acreage do you have? Is it cross fenced? Do you have a pond? Is there a barn with a tack room? Those are the kinds of things they want. But if you're luxury in River Oaks or Hunters Creek or in town, some of these buildings, they want saunas. They want imported Italian porcelain. They want to make sure that when their friends come to see their house, their friends go, wow, he has arrived. And if your house doesn't show that, you're missing the mark.
Well, finally, for anyone listening who is considering selling now to move into luxury property in the next year, how do you recommend they start preparing?
Well, I always recommend you start with a lender. You want to make sure you can afford what you want. Then the next thing I would do is drive your neighborhoods, drive them at night, drive them on the weekends, see what kind of activity is there, see if it fits who you are as a person. Then you want to find a realtor who understands the areas and understands both sides, understands what it's going to cost to sell your house and what it's going to cost to get you into another house. You can use 2 different realtors. I've done that a lot, work with other realtors, but if you need them to be collegial so that everything is smooth. So you get those pieces in place first, and then you go find your perfect dream home.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Crafting Your Next Move. If you're thinking about selling in Cypress, Tomball, Memorial Villages, Inner Loop, or anywhere in the greater Houston area, visit craftrealtyteam.com to learn more or connect directly with Lori's team. And remember to leave a review, and share this episode with someone who can use it.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.